Welcome back and welcome to our small holding.
Do you sometimes feel dissatisfied with your life? Do you feel like all you ever do is get up, go to work, come home, do chores, pay bills, go to bed, get up and do the same thing the next day? If so, maybe you need to change your life. Maybe this is the series for you.
In this new series, So You Want to Be a Small Holder, we've already been through this journey. So we're going to help you with hints and tips in finding the right property, paying for that property, and how you might earn a living once the small holding is set up. So come and join us. Hi, my name's Fiona.
And my name's Hugh.
In an NFU mutual survey, 47% of people said that they wanted to escape the rat race, move to the countryside and run a small holding.
So if almost half the population want to live the good life, why aren't they doing it? Well, the survey looked at that and they found a number of reasons. The cost of a small holding was a concern. People were also worried about the workload of running one. They're worried about work-life balance, living in the country. They're also worried that they lack the skills.
This is a journey we've already been on, and we've taken that leap of faith and we've dealt with these 4 concerns. And what we want to do in this series is help you lay the groundwork, the foundations, so that you can take that leap too and live your small holding dream. In this first of the series, we're going to cover why you'd want to live the good life in the first place, why it's good for you, but also we'll give you a balanced viewpoint so that you know what the downsides are and then you can make an informed decision. So let's get started on this journey.
So we came to a place in our lives where we decided that we were working really hard, we were climbing the greasy pole, we were living the corporate life, and it just wasn't making us happy.
Our health was also suffering. We had pressurised deadlines to meet and we were working with some very, very demanding people, and that meant that our minds were working all the time, which then led to lack of sleep because we couldn't turn our brain off to actually get to sleep, and our health suffered as a result. So we decided to look into what would make us happy, what would actually make us a little bit healthier.
Having decided that money does not necessarily equal happiness, we thought about living in the country. And we thought, well, is there any scientific evidence that says living in the country is better for you? And I think you might be interested in what we found out. So in our quest to put some science behind the question of, is it better to live in the country? We looked at a lot of statistics, and to be fair to everyone here, there were UK statistics in the main, so if you don't live in the UK, I would check your local research. But what did we find? Well, a 2007 Office of National Statistics survey said that for both men and women, life expectancy is higher in rural areas than urban areas, and there's less divide between rich and poor.
There's also significant evidence that mental health is much stronger with people who live in the countryside.
Sadly, the only exception to that is male suicide. That is higher in rural areas. Physical health, though, in a number of areas is better in rural areas. For example, air quality is much higher generally in rural areas than in urban ones. And as a result, respiratory complaints like asthma and other respiratory problems have a lower incidence in rural areas.
One very interesting statistic is around violent crime. Now, we've had a lot of friends and neighbours join us, move from the urban and city environments and come to live in the countryside. And a lot of them are actually quite afraid when they first move here, because the houses are quite spread out, that they're more likely to be a victim of violent crime. The reality is that the statistics don't bear that out. By a very, very wide margin, you are far less likely to be a victim of violent crime in the countryside than you are in the urban and city environment.
So in conclusion, there's no way to measure happiness and there's no way to know if it's right for you. But what we could find out is that on average, in rural areas, people live longer, they have better physical and mental health, and they're less likely to be the victim of violent crime.
In this section, we want to take you through the good and the bad about living in the countryside. And I am going to be the little angel on your shoulder telling you all the great stuff about living around the country.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with it.
Noise. Now that's one of the great things. There's lots of peace and quiet in the countryside. There's not traffic noise constantly. There's not people blaring their horns. There's not loud dance music from someone having a house party till 3 a.m.
No noise? Tell me that when at 3 o'clock in the morning we got a combine harvester getting the wheat in before the rain right outside the bedroom window. Tell me that when in the summer and it gets light early, we've got tractors and trailers coming past every 15 minutes from 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. There's lots of noise in the country. It's just a different kind of noise.
But there's lots of space. We're not living on top of each other. We aren't crowded by lots of other people. We can go for a walk here for hours and barely see another soul. It's fantastic to have all of this space.
Yeah, it's space. There's nothing there. Right? If you want to go to Waitrose from here, it's a 45-mile drive to the nearest Waitrose. If you want to go into town, it's an hour each way. Now, if you're a car driver, that may not worry you. If you're a teenager, without your own transport, it can be a real problem. They can feel really isolated living out in the country.
But there is a much lower cost of living. For example, you can go to a supermarket and spend £2.50 on 1 kilo of potatoes. We can go to our local farm and buy a 20-kilo sack of potatoes for £5. It's much cheaper to live in the countryside.
It may be cheaper, but what are you going to do? If you live in a city, you're surrounded by offices and factories and jobs and work opportunities. We're surrounded by cabbages.
You are far more likely to run your own business in the countryside. So if you're a smallholder, you are running your own business. And when you wake up in the morning, you can decide what's the biggest priority and what you're going to do with your day.
You're far less likely to take a day off in a rural area. When did we last have a day off?
Very true.
Because it's your business, there's always something that wants to be done, and it's so hard to just step away from it. Now, there's the old saying of, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But you better love it, because if you see smallholding as a job, you're going to work very long hours.
But houses, even though they're more spread out, we have found that our neighbours are far more neighbourly. Quite recently, I needed a bolt for something I was putting together and I didn't have the right size. So I knocked on a neighbour's door and he just gave me boxes of bolts and said, choose whatever you want. It was absolutely fantastic.
Our neighbours are fantastic, but I have to say that's not true in all countries and in all rural areas. Some people are not only unwelcoming, they've actually frozen friends of mine out from certain rural areas. So I would advise anyone who's thinking of moving to the country, do your research and find out how welcoming the local population are.
But in most rural areas, you are more likely to get more bang for your buck. So you'll get more square footage in your home, you'll get larger gardens, you'll get more land, far more than you can expect to get for exactly the same money in an urban or a city environment.
And what Fiona says is very true, but the services and infrastructure might be far less. So if you need blisteringly fast broadband to run your business, do your research. Here, you're going to get it. Some areas are still on dial-up in rural areas. So, you know, your Skype is going to run a little bit low on dial-up. If you're frightened to rod your drains, because you're almost certainly going to be on a septic tank, if you're frightened to pull your well pump out and replace it when that needs doing, that can be an issue in rural areas. If you need access to a top-of-the-range teaching hospital, you're very unlikely to have one close. One thing that I can't emphasise too much is if you're thinking of, even toying with the idea of a move to the country, start learning now.
One of the biggest things that we've learned in our journey into the smallholding is not to learn on the job. It's really, really hard if you're reliant on the food that you're growing or raising to actually learn as you go, because it's very easy to make mistakes first time around.
Do courses. If you want to keep bees, go on a beekeeping course. If you're going to heat with wood, learn to maintain your own chainsaw, learn how to operate it safely. There's a vast variety of skills you're going to need, and they're great fun to learn, even if you never make that ultimate move to self-reliance.
But you don't necessarily have to spend money by going on courses. You can volunteer and get the experience and knowledge that you need. If you want to grow vegetables, there's community gardens or the city farms where you can learn about double digging, nutrition in the soil, or even on those city farms looking after livestock. For example, there's other avenues you can go down. If you're interested in chickens, as we are, you can volunteer with the British Hen Welfare Society, who are always on the lookout for people to help them because they rehome lots of chickens.
What else can you do? Read. Read a lot. I read book after book after book. And there are some real classics out there that can talk to you in a great way, either about a specialist subject or about smallholding life in general. If you want to buy yourself a present to dream with, just get John Seymour's Complete Guide to Self-Sufficiency. But there's some cracking specialist books as well. The Haynes Chicken Manual is a really good read for any wannabe chicken keeper.
You can start out small. You don't have to have a giant vegetable garden to start growing vegetables. Get a plant pot and grow some carrots. Grow some vegetables in your window boxes. Or if you're interested in livestock, start out with a couple of chickens in the back garden. You don't need a breeding flock the size of ours. Or if you're a little bit more adventurous, grab yourself an allotment.
Practice. Do it now. You're going to be a beekeeper? Keep some bees in your suburban garden. You're going to preserve your own food? Learn to can, learn to make cheese, learn to make your bacon, learn whatever you can and do it, albeit maybe a small scale. You're only going to make 6 jars of jam rather than 60, but get that practice in. It's invaluable. I'll tell you now, the first 3 times I try any new skill, be it soap making or jam making, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it wrong. So get those learnings in while you're not relying on the output.
But think about the rounded skills that you're going to need, because it may not just be digging the soil and raising your livestock. You are going to have machinery that are going to need to be maintained, like rotavators or mowers, or even small tractors. So car mechanics or basic mechanics for agricultural vehicles is a good idea to try and pursue and get that knowledge.
And all round, just think of everything you possibly can, learn it now. Do you know how to fence? Do you know how to cut wood? Do you know how to sharpen the saw to cut wood? Just get learning. So that's some of the things to think about if you want to stop dreaming about the good life and start living it.
There'll be a number of programs in this series, and we'll cover things like finding the right property, how to earn money once you have that small holding, and how to acquire the skills that you might need to make that small holding dream easier once you start. But if there's anything which is worrying you, particularly about moving to the country and starting small holding, that you want to see next, leave it in the comments section and we'll do our best to make that as the next program in this series, or at least make sure that we've included it in one of the future programs.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you want to see the rest of the series and every other video we make, hit the subscribe button, the bell next to it. You'll hit every time we upload a new video. But whatever you do, come back and see us soon. Take care. Tractors are basically the core of the problem. Seriously?
We've been through this journey, so we hope in this series to help you dispel some of those concerns that you might have.
More cars? Peace, she says, peace. We've built up a whole library on self-reliance, self-sufficiency and small holding. If you want us to share that with you as part of this series, we'd be happy to.